Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a birthday card to share with you. It's a simple one but with lots of Copic coloring. So for today's card I'm using the Cool Cat stamp set for my favorite things and the A2 layers die from Waffle flowers. First of all I stamped out these images on Transotype perfect coloring paper, and the idea is to play again a bit with that glow that I tried out last year. To make the coloring a bit easier for myself, I tried to stamp these two images the way I wanted to place them on my card. This way I could still check the images right now and placement to see where the glow needed to be on the other parts than the moon. I started with the moon just because I thought, well, then I have that over with and then I can start fiddling with that glow that I want to create on the kittens, on the fish. And so I worked my way back and forth. I wanted to have quite a contrast with the moon, and so I had a bit of a struggle getting the blend that I wanted, but I just kept going back and forth until I liked it. But in case you want to check out or revisit the color combinations that I used today, they are all listed on my blog post, easy for reference for you guys. Now for the moon I did as always, I started with my darkest color and worked my way towards my lightest and kept going back and forth. Now for the other images, I realized last year that it was quite handy to first have some sort of an idea where you want that glow to be and then start, as always, from darkest to lightest, as I do. So that's what I did here. I added a bit of that yellow all over. It was a really soft yellow marker that I used, so it wasn't enough to help me with that glow straight away. But I fixed it. I went back and forth with the fish, and then for the cat, before I started with my darkest colors, I just took a darker yellow marker to help me get the glow a bit more present before starting with the browns. And then once I had that glow sort of in place where I wanted it to be, I took my darkest markers as always and I worked my way from darkest to lightest, going back and forth, adding more layers wherever I needed to get that blend that I want. And with the glow, I must admit, it's a bit more of a challenge. But again, this paper, Transotype Perfect Coloring Paper, is really handy because it allows you to add several layers whenever you need to. And that's in this case just a gift from heaven. So here onto lighter markers, and as you can see that the yellow sort of still is coming through in a way. I will still have to add some yellow afterwards once I'm happy with the blend of the browns, but on the lighter areas you can definitely see it. It's a bit harder with the darker markers, but no worries, we will keep going back and forth until I like the amount of glow that I have. So that's the first step, having again the blend that you want. And then I just decided to go back in there with those yellows and do a bit of flicking the other way around. And then fading it out a bit more with the lighter one. And that's just how this all came together. But it's definitely something to get used to, because it's a different way of coloring. Of course, it's also a different way of looking at markers, and still a bit outside of the comfort, but I will get better at it, and I hope that I can help you in any way by showing you here the process that I'm going through to get that a bit more, or a bit better, if you want to call it like that. Once again, back to that moon. As I said, the blend wasn't going that well with the specific markers that I decided to use. And as I said as well, this paper can handle quite a lot of layers. Sometimes it sort of stops taking on the ink. That's a way of being oversaturated for this paper. Then either you heat set it, this way it can dry and the paper is ready for another layer, or you can let it dry on its own like I did here, just go to another part of the images that you still need to color and return. Now, for the card. This panel is slightly smaller than A2. I will work with a blue cardstock in the back behind this panel, but that's for later on. Now for the background. I wanted to play again with that glow from the moon and then a really dark area. Now you can use stencils as I did in the past and just let that stencil be a guide for you. Or you can do it another way around and use, for example, post-it tape. That's what I did here. I just masked off the edges and I really had to hang over there, so I'm sorry. I masked off the edges. I wanted to have a bit more space on the bottom than on the top, because on the bottom I still had to add that sentiment. So that I did a bit higher up. The rest was just on the edges of my panel, and then I could start with my Copic markers. Important for me was to know where that moon was going to be, and you can sort of keep it there and work your way around, or I had this idea of stamping it out using my Fadeout no line coloring detail ink. You can also use another ink, because with the wide outline that you have from die cutting it, you will not see it. But I just did it with this ink, just to be sure. And then I could start coloring all around the moon, having that glow presence, and this was my guide. So here you will see me building up that color. I wanted that yellow, quite vibrant next to the moon, then a bit softer going into a light blue, and then work my way to a darker blue to have really that midnight sky kind of feeling. Now, my first initial idea was I want that post-it tape to resist the ink. Of course, the post-it tape is a sort of paper, so at a certain point the alcohol marker that you are going to overlap will come from underneath the paper, which was something that along the way I figured out that that would be happening, and I said to myself, well, just let it go, we'll see how bad it is. Now I must admit, once I removed the post-it tape and I saw that bit of a rough edge, I just thought it was genius. Personally, I find it a bit more artistic than just a straight edge. It's like you tear the paper from a picture and you just pasted it on top of your card, and I like that. It wasn't intentional, but it was a lucky thing that happened, in my opinion. So I'm not worried about that. And here I'm just going around, making sure that I get that blend between my markers, using quite a lot of markers and a lot of ink. It is soaked, the back of this piece. But that's not an issue. As long as I get that blend that I want, that's perfectly fine. And if you have trouble getting a blend in between several markers, it's always handy to do a bit of flicking. It's something that really helps if you want to get a blend right. You can also do tip to tip if your markers are too far away from each other. Here I'm not afraid to go over the blue with the yellow to get some sort of a green transition. It works, so why not? And here you see that rougher edge, but I like it. I don't know what you think, but I think it's a lucky thing that happens. So for the sentiment, I decided to do it in 2 rows underneath the background that we just created. Masking it off with purple tape. I cannot snip my stamps apart. I cannot do that. Like my heart will break. It's something that I just cannot stand. So I'm not doing that. You can do that if you want to, if you don't have issues with that. That's perfectly fine. Your stamps can handle it. I just cannot. So I'm stamping it out a few times to get that lovely impression. And then once I have my sentiment on top there, I can add my cat using some thin foam squares. But first a bit of fixing. There was just a bit of a weird spot on the back, and in the end the fish will be over it, so it was not an issue, but I made it an issue, so I just thought let's just go over that once more. I also decided to add stars, not too much. Well, maybe it was just laziness, but I just didn't think that it needed a lot of stars. You can add a lot, you can add a complete back, you can also add snow and see it as snow. I did that for the winter and Christmas cards from last year. A lot of fun as well. But for today, it's all about night sky, stars. Whether you add your images before the stars or after, that's totally up to you. But from time to time, if you want to add a lot, it's better to first add the images, because this way you're not adding a zillion stars behind things that you won't see at the end. So for that, it might be handy to just do it at first, the images and then the stars, but it's totally up to you. Both ways work. So I'm covering the images completely with thin foam squares. For the moon, I had to sort of make sure that it was aligned with my no-line version. And then the cat, I'm slightly adding on the edge of my background. Maybe it's just a cat staring outside of a window, you never know. Then for the back here, I have a piece of Midnight cardstock from Concord and 9th. I cut out the middle because it's just a waste of paper. And well, if I'm not too impatient, it's better to do it this way. Now I have a piece left over for next cards, otherwise it's completely used and it's just such a shame. So I'm trimming off the excess that I have of my card base, and once that's done, I'm going to add the panel on top. Therefore, I am going to use a bit of dimension and I am using some Scotch 3M foam tape for that. I'm covering it completely. You know me by now. I prefer doing that just to be sure when I'm mailing it that it won't be damaged too much due to everything that is mailed that day. So therefore, covering it as much as possible. And then I will try to align it as straight as possible. And then I'm going to finish off the card using some glossy accents. There are glosses, I mean, can you ever pass the opportunity to add glossy accents to glosses? I don't know. I have difficulties with that, so whenever I have glosses, I'm adding glossy accents. And then I have that head with those parts that are white. I like adding stickles on top of that, so I'm doing that as well. And that is going to be my card. Really simple, but as I said, a lot of Copic coloring. I hope that you enjoyed this video and it might help you to also try something similar like this. If you have any questions, you know where to find me in the comments down below. I want to thank you all for stopping by and taking the time to watch this video. I wish you all a great day and I'll be back soon. Bye!